Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Honors Podcast. Today with me, I have one of the coolest people in the Honors program with me today. Would you like to introduce yourself for our listeners? Welcome to the Honors Podcast.
Angelina. I have obviously been here for 4 years. I did a double major and a double minor here at my time in High Point as an international relations and Spanish double major, and then a double minor in business administration in Latin American and Caribbean studies. I've joined a lot of different kinds of clubs that I can talk about miscellaneously, but I think my favorites have always been ballroom, which has been a big aspect of my personality as I try to put ballroom as many times as I can in a conversation. Alpha Phi Omega, the community service one, has always been close to my heart. And then the honors program has always been a big conversation topic, especially with some of my most recent classes that I've enjoyed.
Okay, and then where is your homeland? Where do you come from?
So I come from a small town an hour south of here.
Yeah.
The Honors College is probably bigger than my town. It is New London, North Carolina. It's about 600 people in there. My family of 5 moved in very recently in about 2021, and we've been there ever since in that little parsonage home and literally nowhere. So.
Okay, so you came from somewhere else before this?
Yeah, so I've lived in almost 11 different homes growing up. I've probably
You were a traveling child.
Yes, for no reason, for absolutely no reason. We are just a nomadic family. We were not military. We were nothing, but I've lived in North Carolina. I was born here in Mooresville, North Carolina. I moved to Tennessee where my middle brother, Mark, who also goes here as a sophomore, he is from Tennessee, and then my youngest brother, Matthew, is from Ohio, and he's planning to come here next incoming cycle of freshmen in 2026, and he's from Ohio. My parents are from California and Wisconsin, and I have family all over the United States.
That's really cool. So when you were growing up, why did you think you were moving around?
I honestly don't remember. I know it was my dad. He worked with a big fiber composite company at the time, and he just kept getting relocated, and suddenly we stayed here in North Carolina, and we moved back in 2011, and we liked the weather as much as we could, and we switched jobs recently, and his job has been gracious enough to let us stay here in North Carolina because I loved High Point. My brothers loved High Point, so we ended up staying here, and he works virtually for a company down in Mississippi now. So
okay.
I think growing up really struggled with making friends because I would always assume that was the only year that I'd spend at that school.
Yeah.
So I'd go from middle school to high school to even elementary school. It's like I never had a consistent friend group, so I never knew what it was like to have neighbors. I never knew what it was like to have, I guess, like the roommates or the community.
Yeah.
So coming here to High Point and having my freshman roommate, Ashlyn Long, was a big change for me, but I think it changed me for the better. So.
That's really cool. Is there anything else about that childhood experience, the nomadic experience, as you say, that it contributed any aspects to your identity today? Oh,
absolutely. While we were moving around a lot, my parents have always loved to travel, and that kind of started from my grandmother. She was born in Colombia, South America, and she was the oldest of 12 siblings.
12, like the literal cheaper by the dozen.
Yes. And so being the oldest of 12 siblings, like was like one of the moneymakers of the family, and she didn't have a chance to go and explore. She didn't have a chance to go around the world. And so she met my grandfather, who drove a lovely motorcycle from Michigan all the way down to Colombia, South America. So he traveled the entirety of the mountain range on a motorcycle to see my grandmother. And so whenever they got together, they traveled from Argentina to Spain to Greece to China. They saw the Terracotta Army, and I have all these different pictures of their travel, and that passed down to my mom. And my mom's always been the travel person, and that kind of passed down to me.
Yeah. And this past summer, you traveled to Colombia for a great opportunity. I want to know more about that.
So I didn't originally have an opportunity set up at the beginning of summer. It was a plan that I was going to have to do something else that kind of fell through, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And then suddenly, after a month of reading about 10 books, I was like, okay, I need to get off my butt here. And so I applied to the Intern Colombia, which is just a small kind of internship group inside of Colombia specifically that works out of 2 cities. So given that I had family in Medellin, Colombia, I was able to have a big discount on the tuition that I would have paid for them, which was about $1,500 for about 7 weeks in Medellin, Colombia. And so I got to do like 4-wheeler tours, and I got to explore a lot of the countryside in the city, and then work with children and children's rights throughout the 7 weeks that I was there.
Wow, that's really cool. Why did you really want to go there?
I think I've always there's a particular line in a movie that I've always watched, and in the movie it says nostalgia for a world I've never known. And growing up with my name being Angelina, like I've known that it wasn't Angelina, it was Angelina. And I was always fascinated with Aztecian culture and Inca culture, just the ancient history of Latin America being so like virtually different from the rest of the world. In some reason and some way, my heart just kind of pulled me more towards South America and learning the Spanish language. And ever since I was little, I've always been like Spanish, Colombia. And then given the fact that I could live there for 7 weeks, I was like, I get to learn more about a family that I virtually didn't know existed until high school. The first time I ever seen them, ever since I was 1, I went when I was 1 year old, to in 2022, and Christmas was the first time I met almost 73 different family members at a Christmas house and at a Christmas party. And I was like so overwhelmed. I was like, there's so many people named Maria. There's so many people named Fernandez. There's some people named Mafe. There's Fernandez, and there's just like so different nicknames. But it was really cool to see how extended family is so much closer there than in the United States, and to be able to go back was like, wow, like this is what family feels like right to me, instead of a lot of what American culture paints itself to be.
I know, that's so, because I do a lot of Chinese cultural learning, and I guess for Latin America too, it sounds like there's such this sad distinction between that and American individualism, where like we're obsessed with like, once you're old and graduate, you got to move out, you got to like make it on your own. But like that's so unique to like America. Like everywhere else, it's like, no, stay with your family, let them support you, and like have those communities and relationships. And I don't know, like we hear so much about like the loneliness crisis in America, which that's worldwide too to an extent, but like it's sad. And like, I don't know, I don't want to like live on my own sad. And but yeah, that's really great that you had that experience. The journey of Spanish. We've talked about this before, and like you kind of like forcing yourself to like learn Spanish as you grew up. Can you share that story for us?
Yeah, so I was actually originally born speaking Spanish. Like I did not learn English until my dad, given that he learned French instead of Spanish to be different from his siblings, because he's the youngest of 3. He was like, I'm going to learn French, and that's what I'm going to do that's different, and then ended up marrying a Spanish woman. So they got to a point that my dad did not know how to speak Spanish, and I kept saying things he didn't understand. It's like, okay, we're scratching all this. So I would like to believe that I was actually postponed in learning English because I took so much of my early life learning Spanish. And so losing that, I lost a lot of vocabulary that I was supposed to learn in English, and then I started relearning it when I was given the opportunity in 8th grade at a little like kind of public charter high school. And so I learned at 8th grade, and then I kept doing it in 9th grade. I had the option to continue at 10th grade, and I was like, you know what, we're going to keep doing it. So I think it's 8 years now I have been learning Spanish consistently through formal education. And it you notice when I go to other different countries, because a lot of people say that I speak biblical Spanish, which is very different. It's often harder accentually for others to understand because I can speak in the accent. Yeah. But I use grammatical structures that are so rigid that it trips me up and it trips others up. So.
Like you're speaking like Shakespeare Spanish.
Yes. And so my mom speaks it that way and I speak it that way.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. I'm always scared to Americans are always scared to speak their foreign language because we're so poorly educated in our foreign language programs. But I think we're getting better at it.
I think we're getting better.
Yeah. People are realizing now that the world is, connected and Americans are the only, we're falling behind because we're not naturally able to work abroad because we only all know one language. It's kind of unfortunate, but I think it's getting better. I know I always promote our language department on tours. Yeah. So what language do you want to do? Well, have you thought about minoring in it? How about double major? It's pretty fun. And I don't know if you were planning on doing that when you came to college here.
I did plan. I knew I wanted to have Spanish, at least some kind of degree. I I think originally to do it as a minor, because I just was like, I don't see myself not taking Spanish classes. And then I realized I would have finished the minor probably the end of my freshman year. I was like, oh, I can't do that. Like, I have to keep going with it.
Yeah.
But there's a conference that I went to in September because I did research for one of my Spanish capstone senior projects. And I talked about how there was a melody to gender and how gender presentation in this world where a lot of music is being concentrated on uplifting the female perspective or the female image. And so there's now this reunited, like, oh my goodness, let's build it up in literature, let's build it up in music. And I wanted to see if that movement was continuing in South America. So I did some research on 2 Colombian artists called Carol G and J Balvin. They're really popular. And researching some of their music and presenting it allowed me to apply for a conference in Elon. And at a conference in Elon, there was a keynote speaker who talked about this theme of untranslated, where because Americans are not naturally in the education system learning this new style of culture and learning this new style of ways, we're actually suffering emotionally because we don't know a correct word to express this like very minute and very niche emotion. Where there in German, like there's a word that specifically mentions like the joy that someone gets when their friend slips on ice. Yeah. And it's like really, really funny, but there's a specific word for that. Yeah. And so he talks about how he would fail Spanish class after Spanish class, and he would fail it and fail it and fail it. But because he kept trying, he's now like on the Fulbright panelists, and he's one of the most renowned people ever for like Spanish education. And so he actually foresees that there's going to be more bilingual people in the United States than there are pure Spanish speakers in Spain, which is such a weird thing to think about, because bilinguacy and the sharing of culture and the sharing of language is the new hot topic for like humanities studies and in language departments around education systems.
So there will be more bilingual speakers in the U.S. than in Spain in like what? In like 10 years or?
Yeah, in the next like 10 years.
That's good. That makes me really hopeful. On the untranslated thing, one of my favorite words in Chinese that like there's not a word for in Mandarin is sanbu. And it's like the desire to walk unaimlessly. Yeah. And just like wander and aimlessly walk around, which like I especially appreciate being a college student, because it's always like point A to point B, next destination. And it's really like, I need to sanbu. I need to sanbu. And like, yeah, I really like that. And it's really nice when you just like have a word. And the other thing I love listening to songs in other languages, because there's certain like phrases that sound so good in another language, like even Spanish songs, especially too, because it's a Romance language. But like Chinese songs, like one of my favorite lyrics is Zimla Shuo Saijian. Like that sounds like kind of aesthetically pretty. Yeah. And it means like, how do I say goodbye? Which how do I say goodbye is a lot more syllables, and like you don't really hear that as a song lyric a lot, but it's like a beautiful song lyric in this one Chinese song I listened to, and like I only know it because I know that language, and like it unlocks so much for you, and it's really good. On the language at High Point thing, I was so done with Chinese when I came here, and I was like, and I was gonna say our honors program does a good job at like encouraging us to think about it at least, because I remember when I was in colloquium, I don't know if you remember this, but like Dr. Leclerc had come in or someone from the language department, and they're like gave this whole lecture about like the benefits of like picking up a language as a minor or major in college, and like, you should do it, guys. And I remember having a whole crisis freshman year. It's like, no, I'm done with Chinese. I don't want to do it. And then since we have to take the language class anyway, I like took it, see how I felt about it, and I was like, actually, this is really good. Yeah. I miss it. It was really good.
I really enjoyed, I think, Spanish in the Spanish department now, because I get all the different kinds of accents from people in Mexico. I've had people from Spain. I've had people from Venezuela. And so having all these different accents is sometimes hard to, in the first 2 weeks, to kind of adjust to that accent. But I think it ends up helping, because you get all these different dialects and you find different ways to phrase and pair things together. And this actually reminds me back at that untranslated conference, is that whenever someone does learn a second language, like your brain physically like changes. Yeah. And it is said in the new research that it would postpone dementia coming by for like a good 5 years, because your brain literally changes to accommodate for knowing how to interpret meaning and value in 2 different ways. And so I think the closest that Americans get to this like vague kind of finding our own language but not having a word for it is where we have American poetry, because we've always been obsessed with like Shakespearean poetry. We've always been obsessed with poetry conferences and wording things in a specific way, which kind of ties into that like American individualism. Like, how do I word myself using this different language that we kind of created because we didn't want to be Britain? We just misspelled things so that we could be different. And there's one quote from, I think, J.R. Tolkien, who says, "Not all that glitters is gold. Not all those who wander are lost," has been something that I've always put on like Instagram bios, or something that I've held closer to my heart, because it's that feeling of I want to wander, but I don't, like, I'm not scared of getting lost. I'm not scared of trying something new. I'm not scared of this. And not all that everyone thinks is valuable, like gold or diamonds or silver, is going to be valuable to me. But I'd rather go to Colombia and I'd see these kids, and these kids would run up to me because I'm wearing a specific polo that says, "This is someone you can trust." And so there are mothers that would hand their babies to me. There are mothers that would talk to me even though that I looked very, very different. I have very blue eyes, even for a Colombian myself. Like, I look very different. But because of this sentiment of knowing a language that can tie two people together has been really, really interesting to see cross barriers.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What do you think in regards to, like, including like primary education? Like, what's the problem with how we do language learning in our American school system? Like, what needs to change about it for us to be this apparently bilingual society in 10 years?
Oh, I think that's a great question.
Because I thought about this too, because like, I don't know, if there's like a weird sentimentality, like we just don't care about learning another language a little bit. Like, it's not the priority in most school systems ever. Like, even my school, because I like learned Chinese in middle and high school too, but it was never like the priority. And like, I never became fluent in the same way like other countries do that like enforce learning English and like they're able to become fluent in it. And I'm like, what are we doing wrong?
Yeah. That's I think a big thing that I've seen in Spain, and the Spanish education system. They take a test at the end of their high school, and if they pass the test, they can go to higher education. But if they don't pass the test, then they have to get a job. And some of these jobs are most often servers. So if you pass, then more doors open to you. And I think the rigidness would help, but everything is a balance in the United States. So even if we were introducing history at such a young age where students or like kids can choose to do Dia de los Muertos and they can represent that, they don't recognize that they're representing that or they're talking about it until you're probably our age. Because I didn't recognize history. I didn't memorize history. I was terrible at history until probably college. And being terrible at history and being terrible at dates, like I hated learning about the American Revolution. I was like, this again? We get to talk about the Confederacies. We get to talk about all this. And it just like never was relative. And I think the intentionality and the relativity to us in primary education is what really matters, because if we are in Arizona, then we should talk about like the native communities in Arizona, because that's going to be something we see in primary education as someone, especially when we're like forming our identity in primary education. Like, you need that intentionality for the community, and that's not what we get, or at least that's not what I got hopping from school to school to school to school, because we would just learn about the same things over and over again until it's stuck. And
that's true. That was good. Yeah, that's something I've thought about too, because like I don't remember anything from all that stuff. And I wish I had because the best way to learn is to learn about the world, like your world, you know? So I agree with the learning locally stuff. And especially that might be a really good case for American education, because, you know, state diversity is like actually pretty incredible. And like there's so much difference between Arizona and then Northeast Georgia, where I'm from, which is like very... It's a technical rainforest. Like there's so much biological diversity. So I do remember, like we would go outside and do like, you know, field tests a lot. So I remember learning a lot about like, okay, this is what these tree species are. And like, I don't really remember anymore, but I remembered it a little bit more because it was like, oh yeah, there's that poplar tree and things like that. So yeah, that's a good case. But then how would that work for language if like, because in other countries, at least, like the environment also naturally is multilingual. Like I remember when I went to Prague, like even like the servers, they spoke like 3 languages because like they had to, and that was the environment. But I don't know how that environment would be created here, because I don't know if anyone really wants anything forced upon them.
No, but it's a matter of, I think, starting the value of relevance very, very young is what would get you, because I tutor here at the university too. And I've noticed that whenever I set a goal with a student, everyone says like, oh yeah, we're going to set goals, but you need to set goal in their world. Yeah. So for me, because of my history and because of the fact that I did not grow up with my Colombian family, but I have a Colombian name, like that pulled my heart. Says like, I need to learn Spanish so I understand who I could have been. And that was my relative tie. And then for some of these students that I work with, like they're often business students. And I'm like, okay, like you are an entrepreneur. You really want to create this tackle product or something. Imagine selling that tackle product to 45 billion other people who can invest in that project. You can sell it to 45 billion other stores and 45 billion other ideas that can make that product better. And that idea, like, oh my gosh, like I could be a better person. I can have better results when I am able to articulate that idea and that passion in 2 different languages. And that's where the relevance and the importance of intentionality, where it's lost in primary education, where we teach them the same exact thing. We teach them how to cut, how we teach them not to draw on the walls. And it's just like these rules that are constraining, not fostering this ideation and creativity. And that's what we lose. And we have a lot of research that in psychology where these like chimpanzees are kind of figuring out how to do mind puzzles. And if you have to touch a square, a circle, and then the triangle ends the game, the chimpanzees will just go to the triangle because they know that ends the game. But for us, because we're taught the certain way to do mathematical formulas and calculus and how to write essays, people who grow up in high school learning the 5-paragraph way to do literature don't know how to write 15 pages in college. And that was my biggest struggle as like in literature and English. And when we're writing papers for honors, like, how do I take that and go from 5 paragraphs to 15 pages that could be presented at a conference? So,
yeah. Speaking of honors, let's transition to the story of choosing High Point. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you eventually moved to North Carolina in 2021. How do you then find out about High Point and then decide to come here and then decide on the honors program?
Mm-hmm. So I applied to 15 colleges.
Me too.
I applied to so many because I was like, I keep finding all these like waivers to apply. I was like, oh, I might as well.
I love the waivers.
I love the waivers. I was very like peer influence, I'd say, in my application base because I heard everybody was applying to NC State, so I wanted to apply to NC State. And I heard everybody was applying to Chapel and everybody was applying to Lenore Ryan and all these other things. And so I took 2 different kinds of perspectives. I took an athletic perspective and I took an academic perspective. So I applied to a lot of different schools, at least in North Carolina, where they had triathlon programs because I was like, oh, why not? Like, triathlon seems a funny thing to do. So I got a couple full rides from Lenore Ryan and at Guilford College where I was going to do like D2, D3 triathlon, and I had never done cycling to this day. Like, I know how to ride a bike and that's about it. And I knew I loved swimming, and that was the one reason why I was kind of getting like a lot of prospective emails and stuff for athletics is because I was a really good swimmer. I could do the butterfly, which was pretty rare.
In demand.
It was pretty in demand, and I could run because I did cross country and I did swimming, I did martial arts, I did track, and I also did something else. I did like 5 sports in high school, and so going from 5 sports to ballroom was also a big, lovely little change that I can touch on later. But going from athletics, having a big collection of schools for athletics and a big collection of schools for academics, I decided on High Point in a virtual tour. We had the representative come and visit our campus from a virtual platform, and I noticed that High Point's colors were purple and they had a steakhouse, and I was like, Mom, we have to visit. Like, we put up a tour that weekend. We did a weekend tour. I had the tour all myself. I got all prettied up in a dress. They gave me the COVID mask and everything, and I was so excited to walk through Cottrell, and I was so excited to see the panther because I was like, oh my gosh, like the mascot was not a deacon. I don't know what the deacon is, but I know what a panther is. And so having the familiarity of these are my favorite colors, and this is a school that even the tour guide, like I could ask a sentimental question of what is your favorite color and how has that reflected your childhood to now and how do you see that in your future? There's a different...
You asked your tour guide that?
Yeah.
Well,
I was entertained.
I'm going to start asking my students that. I'm trying to think of like weird questions to ask them to like get them talking.
It's more of a career and professional development plug. So in Cottrell, I'll be like, okay, yes, you know how to interview, but do you know how to control an interview from your side? Because that's the
Yeah.
science of an interview is if
For
you
sure.
can control it, then you are a good interviewer.
Okay.
A
Yes.
good interviewee.
Anyway, continue.
So I try to pull a lot of those into my tours, and
Yeah.
I have probably the longest tour in the ambassador program, about 2.5 hours. But hey, a couple years ago, they said the perfect tour time was between 2 hours and 2.5 hours. So I'm within that tour time. I'm content. I have yet to have a family complain to my knowledge and to
This
my
is
face.
true. This is true.
We just like to walk a little slower. And so that knowing High Point was different in that way. It was the perfect medium. It's not too big. It's not too small. It's not too businessy, but it's doesn't prevent you from learning all these other majors has been my kind of leniency. It was my first tour. So when I got the golf cart and I got the t-shirt, I was like, well, like nothing can compare to High Point.
Yeah.
And I went on all these other tours. I went up to -9 degrees at Colgate University. It was 2 hours from the nearest airport, and it was snowing. I had a blast. I thought this was the funniest thing ever, and I wanted to go to Colgate University if I didn't go to High Point. So
Where's Colgate?
2 hours from Albany, New York.
Oh.
Yeah. It's
Wow.
really, really, it's not the toothpaste. Everyone makes the toothpaste joke. But I really liked it because it was that same little middle ground. It is entirely up one face of a hill.
Ooh,
So
I love a good hill.
I love a good hill. Like, this is a nice, like, this is my athletics. Like, I don't have to go to the gym if I walk up that hill to my dorm. But
Yes.
it was a very college town. Like, the town was pretty much quiet if there's no students in here. And I don't think High Point's like that. It's still pretty busy.
Yeah.
But you can definitely tell it's a little bit more lively whenever we have our students here. And
Yeah.
I think that's what kind of brought me to High Point is this center of business, the High Point Furniture Market, and all these opportunities to get like little small jobs and kind of stick my foot in the door is what got me here.
Yeah, like High Point and like North Carolina as a whole is like, it's very like interconnected. Like I know it's just like, yeah, we're kind of like in the middle of in the States. Like we're so close to Greensboro and some Salem and like 3 hours from the coast, an hour from the capital. And it's like, there's strength in that. And like so many people end up like graduating and working locally in the different companies and stuff. So yeah, there's a really good state benefit to going to college in High Point. Okay. So you got sold on High Point University itself. And then how'd you find out and then eventually decide to do the honors program?
So I probably couldn't tell you what the honors program was. I was still like pretty application happy. So like whatever I applied to, like I just applied to and I had the chance to. So any of the scholarships I could apply to, Present Scholars was a big thing for me. And since this was still COVID area, like a lot of things were still virtual. And so they did the honor seminar on Zoom. And I have a vague memory of Stephen Casey being on the little list, or some people, but I remember there were two boys that would sit in the corner. I couldn't tell you where in Finch this was, but I remember the story of them talking about bunk beds and how they tried to take the twin beds in honors.
I heard this story.
And I maybe this is me making up these memories, but I remember them telling about how they tried to duct tape the feet of the beds together. And then one of the girls was like, yeah, until we heard a crash at 3 a.m. And then everyone started laughing. And I don't remember the end of the story. But I remember just seeing everybody smiling and being together and just like having these fond memories together. That was like, that's what I want. And so it was cool to like be so dedicated to honors because I was between honors and natural sciences because I really wanted to be biology.
What?
Yeah, I really wanted to be biology because I was obsessed with environmental science. And with all the places that I've grown up, like the national park system has been the one consistent in my life. And I would always like love going to nature, and I loved horses. I was such a horse girl. Never have I ever like really ridden horses, but I was just so fascinated with them. And the National Park Service always had some kind of wild horses. So having them talk about like them doing the day trips on hiking, them doing the day trips to do 3 hours of tubing just in a lake somewhere. And I was like, fire, that sounds cool. So having those two consistencies between natural science and honors, I think what eventually put me towards honors is because I was undeclared. And I was undeclared till my end of my freshman year where I declared Spanish. And then a year later, I declared the other major and then the 2 minors. So I was pretty hopping around.
That's honestly the way to do it. It's pretty good. Because then you tried out the biology thing.
Yeah, I did one class in cell biology. I said mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Passed the class and I closed the textbook and it was go. But I did have a lot of lab assistants try to get me to convert to biology because I did some research, just like a class research on the memory imprint of butterflies and butterflies on their wings. And you know me personally, Reed, I hate butterflies. They scare me so much.
Yeah.
But I think they're so pretty as a creature that I cannot touch or get personally close to. But if they were able to find some like historic ancient fingerprint for the butterflies, because every single butterfly wing is different, but kind of like our own fingerprints, like our fingerprints, yes, are unique, but we still follow
a pattern.
Pattern. And so the pattern was always what fascinates me. And even learning language has a pattern. And once you recognize a pattern, it becomes so much easier. Yeah.
That's really good. Wow. This is a really wild fun fact that you came in biology. Yeah, that's really good. What has honors taught you in your senior year? You've gone through the program, gone through the machine. What do you take away from that and apply to your life?
I loved honors. I think honors is set up in such a good way, I guess, functionally, because we take classes separate from the regular general education curriculum. We are given, I guess, less classes, so we're given more chances to us to explore, declare another major, declare another minor. I think that even from my freshman year, coming in and being so excited to be in the colloquium with all these other people, even Here Be Dragons. Yeah. I thought we were talking about dragons. I was so like, when are the dragons going to come in? So I probably should have read the course descriptions a little more, but I really liked Here Be Dragons because I got to talk about like the foundation of the English language and how language started. So that kind of feels...
Yes, I appreciate English a lot more from that class because I didn't realize it was like Roman and then French and then like Germanic
Phoenician,
influences because like English is a very complex language. Like my Chinese teacher says like you only need to know about 1,400 characters to be proficiently fluent in Chinese. You need to know over 100,000 to be proficient in English. And it was like, wow.
Yeah.
So like I guess we speak a smart language. Not that like any language is more intelligent than another, but it's very complex and all these words. And then American, as we were saying, like wants to be different from British English. So like even in that, but anyway, continue.
Yeah, so
Here Be Dragons.
Here Be Dragons, and then Into Social Collapse has been one of my favorite classes. And I was given the research project to bring in actually a textile that my mom owned from Peru, and we talked about Peruvian textiles and the fall of different civilizations. So I like how honors has been able to kind of foster my creativity and foster my love for Latin America, and I was able to do a lot of that in anthropology studies and the studies of society. And I took a class most recently called Neuroscience Fiction. And that was the coolest class I think I took in honors. Although the honors they were fascinating because they always require you to think just slightly differently. And that's what I've appreciated in the honors program instead of probably being like a regular ethics class or a regular biology class, but specifically for High Point, like we are writing intensive and we're trying to explore what hasn't been explored. Like we're trying to connect microwaves and dinosaurs. Essentially, like those are two separate things, but like going back into like separate histories or different ways to connect these two things. I'm going into neuroscience fiction was like, wow, like there's the neurobiology and then fiction, which is something that I think a new generation of people on Book Talk or people on all these different stories want to read stories that aren't ours. Yes. And they are so intrigued by the idea of going on adventures that in the traditional pipeline of a lot of lives, like we don't go through the struggles of like we're losing life in front of our faces. We're not in a battle. We're tasked physically, emotionally, and mentally all at the same time. And maybe within the American society, but because a lot of us, like the Americans, want to read this fiction and tying that in with the neuroscience behind it. Why do we crave creativity? Why do we want to explore something new? Why do we want to read stuff like that? And it was such an interesting class, and I loved that class. And that professor has a TikTok, and she talked about like how every single class is unique, but this specific class, we got to talk a lot about Transformers, which is up my alley. I love learning about Transformers. Avatar, we got to talk about Severance. We got to talk about, I've never seen Severance, but I feel like I know everything about Severance now. Yeah. And so we got to talk about everything from if an apocalypse was to happen, what would you do? Like, what is the line between sacrificing yourself versus sacrificing others? And that you just know someone so much more intimately. And that's what the honors program fosters. Because you're not going to talk about that in a cell biology class. You're not going to talk about that in a political science class. But you're going to talk about how you can fundamentally tell similarities and like I guess, differences in a class like honors, where it requires you to build bridges between the unknowns. And so going through all these different movies and going through short films and finding out how to produce a visual work of film that evokes these different emotions that connect people is honestly everything, like every single thing we as people really want to see, because we love movies, we love books, but to be able to produce a visual perspective that shares that emotion for, I guess, like walking aimlessly, to share that and have that as a central theme is what people want to see. So it's cool we tie in economics and we tie in politics and we tie in like comedy to be able to share new messages. And so that class was so cool in the honors, and being able to go through that class and talk about, oh my goodness, so many different things has been really cool.
That's cool. See, I misunderstood what that class was about, because it seems like you're saying like it's the neuroscience like of fiction stories and like why we love that stuff, and not like fiction about neuroscience.
Correct.
And
so
like AI was what I was hearing. And things
we
like
talked a little bit about AI,
yeah,
but it
like
was
both
more,
a little bit, but also like why we. Oh, that's really cool.
So it's like cognitive dissonance, and how does cognitive dissonance manifest
Yeah.
in the way that you don't want to wake up in the morning?
Yeah.
Because you know that you're going to go through this class and you're going to fall asleep. Like that's cognitive dissonance and ignoring it. So you get to know yourself in a different way, and knowing the brain, and that's what honors fosters differently from the regular education system. And I would remember like going to all these different, I guess, like places where Dr. Hedman would talk about how our honors is different, and like we're one of 7% of honors colleges in the nation that do the reading and writing intensive and are confirmed to do that, and with a general education system that is different than the university policy. Yeah. And that's cool.
It's so cool. It's so great. How do you wish it was better, if you have any critique of it?
I think, that's a good question. There are things that I think would have done differently, probably taken a different class, or I think the mentorship program with having like an older honors or a younger honors was a good idea. I think it's just a matter of if you are put in the right place your freshman year, that really makes or breaks your honors experience. Because I know some people who have went through honors and they just got the wrong time, the wrong time. For my case, it was the right, because I had the social collapse, and then I was able to make my own camera, and then I was able to talk about Avatar, which is a movie that I have loved ever since it came out in 2009. Like, that was my favorite movie. And because everything was set up in the right way, it worked out for me. But the honors program is really rigid, so the year-long research program that we're supposed to do, I think would have been so much easier in our sophomore year, because then
Interesting.
which is a hot take, kind of.
No, I kind of agree, because like I have the time for it sophomore year.
Yeah, so it's a time thing at this point. Like, you're still working into leadership, because your junior and senior year, you're in leadership and clubs. You're in more administrative stuff. So you're fighting with that, and I had to meet with my group at 7 a.m, and frankly, that honors, I guess, research project, which is typically the easiest class that you take, was the worst grades I've ever had in the honors program, was because it was so hard.
This is holding true for me too at the moment.
Yeah. So I was kind of resentful for that class for some way, because I was like, I wish I did it my sophomore year, because junior year I did my senior capstone for Spanish, and junior year I did a lot of the methods, research and planning and proposal, and so then that would have set me up so much further and so much better, so that I can ask better questions for the research that actually applied to my major. And so the honors research program, I think with 4 people is a lot. So if it was better with like 1 or 2 people, or given the option that I wanted to do my own, you can still learn those same skills. Group work is really important. I know that they chief on that for that honors year-long project, but it's cool to tie in the similarities between 4 people, but it sometimes gets really difficult when it's like, okay, I don't want to do this particularly because I know how to do it and it's very easy for me. It no longer becomes interesting, it becomes habit. So, and that's when you lose passion, and I lost that passion pretty early on in that project.
Yeah, so sometimes it is like a weird hit or miss thing. That's a little unfortunate. We should.
I think the placement of that year long is probably would most likely be the thing that could catalyst and change most of the others. Because once you know how to ask questions, you know how to ask questions better for your 3600s for honors program that have more of that literature base your juniors and senior year.
Yeah, this is so true. Well, thank you.
Of course.
What is next for you?
What is next?
What is next for you as you end your journey at High Point and go off into the big world, Angelina?
I couldn't tell you what's next. I think that if I did know exactly what was next, I would be unsatisfied. Because walking or knowing that I'm going to have a job right after I end college is kind of just, there's no end. Like, there's just this period, so there's no time for me to say, like, wow, college, like, these 4 years didn't feel like 4 years. So I tried to apply to the Fulbright Columbia, and I did not get it, but I would get 2 years after I graduate to reapply, so I'm going to reapply next year. But I think what's on the table for me is the Communication Business Leadership Masters. I'm going to come back, do that as a promise I made my freshman year to my mom that made her decide High Point University for me.
For sure.
So I'll do the CBL, but for figuratively, like, what's going to happen with the CBL, since it's like specifically formatted for a part-time job, is I'm actually really closely connected to the furniture market. And so there is a company called Catherine's Home and Flexi Spot that has a lot of the stand-up desks that I work with.
I love a stand-up desk.
So we have battery-powered ones. We have electric ones. They're so nice. My mom's stole one a little bit ago for doing pictures for the company, so they traded her a desk. So I'm going to work with them as their showroom manager. So I get to be in person. I go to the furniture, showroom places about once a week to check on the showroom, check on the new shipments. I get to design the showroom a little bit. So I like that freedom because I was always kind of interested in interior design, but not enough to kind of study it.
Yeah.
But it's cool to have that influence because I get the same talking to people. I get to meet executives from Argentina, and I get to talk about like Walmart International, and I get to do Wayfair International and like talk with these companies that have places in South America. So I get to tie on everything that I want to do with creativity, with language, with connection, with detail and design and organization. I get to tie that all in through a showroom, and that's going to be what presents, like my personality is. My personality says that this logic makes sense, so this story, my story, this company's story makes sense. So I'm excited to do that on top of a little bit of tour guiding and then my master's classes.
Okay. And then, so if you have this a little bit, live in the present, whatever opportunity comes next, philosophy, do you have any idea of like the 10 years down the line in bilingual America, apparently, what you'd want to be doing, where you'd want to be?
I would love the idea of traveling. So I'd love to go. I'm really attracted to the idea of representing High Point because I know one of our counselors, Barbara, always goes to South America, and she kind of brings students and ties in this idea of like High Point is great, but higher education in America is great. And knowing High Point and going through High Point, like I would love to take my cousins who are all in Columbia to be like, come to High Point, like it looks amazing. And so to be able to share an opportunity of learning has always been really important to me. And because I grew up in such a system where I'm hopping from school to school to school to school, from home to home to home to home, like
you've seen a lot.
I've seen a lot, and just given the place of learning and making me in a situation that I can pass my knowledge on to someone else has been a dream for me. So 10 years down the line, maybe I'd love to be in recruitment for something, maybe in human resources for something, just an organization that I truly believe in through my soul, whether that be through global education and like taking people outside of the American culture that they grew up in and then dropping them in a new country saying, hey, your personality is not what you think it is. Here's a new culture. Let's see what you can find out your personality is. So I'd love to do that 10 years down the line. And I already know my retirement job. I'm going to be in Wyoming. I will be in the backcountry of the Grand Tetons. I'll be having a horse farm.
Finally riding horses.
Yes, I will finally be riding horses. I already have the names picked out, the breeds picked out. Everything is a set whenever I retire, and it's going to be in backcountry Wyoming.
That's going to be great.
Because it does exist as the state. So I will be there. You can catch me there. If you want free horse riding lessons in backcountry Wyoming, let me know.
Oh, for sure. I will take you up on that.
Yes.
50 years. Okay. And then the last question on the podcast is the leave a question. So the previous guest left the question for you from last year in 2025. And then you will leave a question for the next guest. The previous guest would like to know, who is one person at HPU that you think has made your journey more meaningful?
I could cry in this moment. There are two people that I love dearly, and the person, oh my gosh, that I love talking about is honestly been Jordell. So we roomed together freshman year, and we lived together for about 2.5 years. And she has been so close to like me and my family. She's like come to Thanksgiving with us. whenever she walks through the doors of my house, my dogs automatically know her. Like, she's
Yeah.
that close. And she's close enough to be in a group chat with my parents without me talking about how much the Green Bay Packers suck, apparently, and how the Bears are a much better team.
Of course.
So she's been a really, really big influence because she's always from day one been like, I'm going to do internships and I'm going to do this. And she's been such a success-oriented person and like such a leadership. And she has leadership in a very comfortable way. And you know me, Reed, like I'm pretty formal. As far as formality goes, like I speak pretty
So
formal. And having her be that person in my back corner that if I need anything, like for resumes or for speeches, for anything, she's always been that person that has been with me for all 4 years. And she's been a very, very big like influence and honestly, like my sister here. And then my little is my other person. I think Drew Daniels, when I first got her in a time that I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do community service anymore. Like I loved it, but now I'm like, oh, do I love it as much? And then getting her and having her be with me for about a full year, like has been one of the best like gifts and decisions I've ever made, is having her be here and being so like equally enthusiastic for exploring the new and exploring the international community and connecting people. And those, both Jardel and Drew, have been such an impact that honestly would bring me to tears anytime that I could write any letter. I could vast of more than a paragraph, and I'm like, dang it, I'm crying again. But both of them have been like probably the longest connections I've had since freshman year, and they've definitely been the people that, if I'm going to get married one day, I'm going to hope and pray that I do. But they would be the people that I'd want standing next to me watch me grow into a different person. So.
Well, that's good. That's a good answer. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast today, Angelina.
Thank you.
I'm going to pass it over to you, and you can leave a question.
Okay.
And please date it and put your initials, unlike the previous two.
On the previous two?
No.
Oh.
Unlike the previous two.
Unlike the previous two?
Yeah.
And do green as a different color?
Yeah. Choose your color.